I hid my ownership. They called me trash and tossed my girl in the snow. Go freeze with dad. Wife filed for divorce. 3 days later, 47 termination letters arrived. Their faces turned white. You know, there's a certain smell that sticks to you when you spend your life working with your hands. It's a mix of heavy-duty degreaser, old copper pipes, and a hint of sweat that no amount of expensive cologne can truly mask. I like that smell. It reminds me of where I came from. But to my in-laws, that smell was the scent of failure. My name is Desmond. I'm 42 years old, and most people in this town think I'm just a guy who's lucky to have a toolbox and a beat-up truck. On this particular Tuesday morning, I was hunched over under a sink in the executive breakroom of Vanguard Industrial. I was wearing my faded navy blue coveralls with a generic name tag that just said maintenance. The faucet had a persistent drip, the kind of small, annoying problem that most executives wouldn't even notice until it started staining the marble. As I worked, the door swung open, and I heard the loud, obnoxious laughter of two men I knew all too well. It was Beckett and Lachlan, my brothers-in-law. They didn't even look down at the man lying on his back on the floor. To them, I was just a piece of the furniture. I'm telling you, Lachlan, Beckett said, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. The old man is going to lose his mind when he sees the expense report for the Miami trip. We just have to label it as strategic vendor outreach. The accounting department at this place is a joke. They don't look at anything under $10,000. Lachlan chuckled, the sound of a man who had never earned a dime in his life but felt entitled to every cent. Why should we care? It's not like it's Everett's money. It's the company's. And since we're family, it's practically our piggy bank anyway. By the way, look at this grease monkey on the floor. Hey, watch the shoes, pal. These cost me $1,200. Don't get your peasant filth on them. I felt the heat rise in my neck, but I didn't say a word. I just tightened the wrench. They didn't know that Vanguard Industrial didn't belong to their father, Everett. They didn't know that I was the one who signed their paychecks every 2 weeks. They didn't know that the joke accounting department they were laughing about had already flagged their Miami trip 3 days ago and sent the report directly to my private, encrypted email. I've spent 14 years playing this part. When I started Vanguard, I was a 28-year-old kid with a degree in mechanical engineering and a relentless drive to build something that mattered. I saw how wealth turned people into monsters. I saw how my own father-in-law, Everett, treated people like disposable napkins once he got a taste of mid-level management power. So, when Vanguard started making its first million, I made a choice. I created a shell corporation. I put a brilliant woman named Adelaide in the CEO chair to be the face of the company. I stayed in the shadows. I wanted to see if the people I loved would love me for who I was, or for what I had in the bank. For 14 years, the answer has been painfully clear. Beckett kicked my toolbox as they walked out, spilling a handful of washers across the floor. Clean that up, loser, he tossed over his shoulder. I sat up, wiped my hands on a rag, and watched them leave. They were heading to a boardroom meeting to discuss growth strategies that they hadn't even written. I, on the other hand, was going back to my truck to check the real numbers. The numbers that showed Beckett had been selling high-end copper inventory out of the back of the warehouse for 6 months. The numbers that would eventually be his undoing. But not today. Today, I had a daughter to pick up from school, and a role to keep playing. People often ask me, well, the very few people who know the truth, how I could stand it for so long. How could I let my wife's family treat me like a stray dog for over a decade? To understand that, you have to understand who I was when I met Clementine. 15 years ago, I was a nobody. I was a guy with big ideas and an empty stomach. I was working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on in a studio apartment that smelled like damp cardboard. Clementine was a waitress at a 24-hour diner where I used to go at 2 in the morning to study engineering blueprints over a single cup of black coffee. She was beautiful, yes, but she was also kind. Back then, she would bring me an extra slice of pie on the house because she saw how thin I was getting. She believed in me when I told her I was going to change the manufacturing world. She was the only person who didn't look at my grease-stained nails and see a dead-end life. We fell in love in the quiet hours of the night, away from the judgment of the world. Then, I met her family. Everett, her father, was a man who measured a man's worth by the brand of his watch. The first time I walked into their house, he didn't even stand up to shake my hand. He looked at my worn-out jeans and my old Ford truck and told Clementine, right in front of me, that she was throwing her life away on a common laborer. When I started Vanguard, the success came faster than I expected. Within 3 years, we were a $20 million company. But by then, the pattern with her family was already set. Everett had lost his job at a local mill and was desperate. Instead of just giving him money, I had Adelaide hire him and the rest of the clan through a third-party recruiter. I wanted to give them a chance to earn a living, to have some dignity. But dignity wasn't what they wanted. They wanted status. Once they were inside Vanguard, they became arrogant. They assumed they were untouchable because they were family to the management, even though they didn't know the top boss was the man they insulted every Sunday dinner. I kept the secret because I was scared. I was terrified that if Clementine knew I was worth 50 million, then 80 million, then over 100 million, she would become like them. I wanted our marriage to be real. I wanted Luna, our daughter, to grow up knowing the value of $1. But as the years passed, I watched the poison of her family's influence slowly seep into Clementine. She started looking at our modest rental house with resentment. She started comparing me to her sister's husbands, men who were actually managing departments in my company and driving luxury cars that I was technically paying for. I felt like a man living in 2 different worlds. In one world, I was the visionary founder of a multi-state industrial empire, making decisions that affected thousands of lives. In the other world, I was the disappointment who couldn't afford to take his family to a fancy resort for the summer. Sometimes, I'd sit in my truck outside our house and just stare at the steering wheel, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. I was testing them, waiting for a sign of genuine grace. But the bar kept getting lower, and they kept failing to clear it. Luna was 10 now, and she was starting to ask why Grandpa Everett didn't like Daddy. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that her grandfather is a narcissist who thinks his son-in-law is peasant filth? The Sunday before Christmas started with a gray, heavy sky that promised a brutal winter. We were invited, if you can call it that, to Everett's mansion for a family strategy dinner. In reality, it was just an excuse for Everett to brag about the new addition to his house and for Genevieve, my mother-in-law, to show off her new jewelry. We pulled up in my truck, which I purposely kept a bit dusty. As soon as we stepped inside, Genevieve blocked the way into the living room. "Desmond, honey," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I just had these white silk chairs delivered yesterday. They're incredibly delicate. Why don't you take your things and head into the kitchen? I've set up a nice spot for you at the small table near the pantry. I'm sure you'd be more comfortable there where you don't have to worry about, well, your work clothes." I looked down at my clothes. I was wearing a clean flannel shirt and dark jeans. I wasn't dirty. I was just not expensive enough for her silk chairs. "Mom, really?" Clementine muttered, but she didn't push back. She just squeezed my arm and whispered, "It's just for tonight, Des. Don't make a scene." So, I sat in the kitchen. I could hear the laughter and the clinking of glasses from the other room. Luna stayed with me for a while, sitting on a wooden stool. She had a small plastic doll she'd been playing with. "Daddy, why can't we sit with them?" she asked quietly. "It's okay, Luna. We have more room for our own party in here," I told her, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. A few minutes later, Beckett's kids came running into the kitchen. They were wearing miniature designer suits that probably cost $500 each. One of them, a bratty kid named Colton, saw Luna's doll. Why is your toy so ugly?" Colton sneered. "My dad says your dad is too poor to buy real toys. He says you have to get your stuff from the trash." Luna's lip trembled. "He does not. My daddy is the best. Colton laughed and tried to grab the doll. It's a loser toy for a loser's kid. I stood up, my shadow looming over the boy. That's enough, Colton. Go back to the living room. The boy ran off crying, and within 30 seconds, Beckett was in the kitchen, red-faced and smelling like expensive scotch. What the hell do you think you're doing, Desmond? You don't talk to my son like that. You're lucky we even let you into this house. You're a guest, barely. If you can't keep your mouth shut, you can go sit in your truck. I looked him straight in the eyes. I thought about the files in my office. I thought about the $400,000 he'd diverted into a private account over the last 2 years. I could have ended him right there. I could have said his name and his bank account number and watched the blood drain from his face. But I didn't. I just looked at him with pity. He was bullying my daughter, Beckett. If you won't teach him manners, someone has to. You don't teach my kid anything, Beckett spat. You're a handyman. You fix toilets. You aren't on our level. Remember that. He walked away, leaving me in the kitchen with my daughter and the smell of a dinner I wasn't allowed to eat at the main table. I looked at Clementine, who was standing in the doorway. She had seen the whole thing. She didn't say a word to Beckett. She just looked at me with a mixture of pity and exhaustion. That was the moment I realized the peace she wanted wasn't a two-way street. It was my silence in exchange for her comfort. 3 days before Christmas, the temperature dropped to 5 degrees. The wind was howling off the hills, shaking the windows of our small house. My phone buzzed at 6 in the morning. It was Everett. Desmond, get over here. Now, he barked without a greeting. The heating system in the West Wing is acting up, and the basement is flooding. I'm not paying an emergency plumber $500 an hour just because it's the holidays. Your family, so you're going to earn your keep for once. Everett, it's 6 a.m., I said, rubbing my eyes. And it's my day off. I was going to take Luna to see the tree downtown. The tree can wait. My basement can't. If you want to remain in our good graces, you'll be here in 20 minutes. Don't make me call Clementine and tell her you're being difficult again. He hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of 14 years of favors pressing down on my chest. Clementine stirred next to me. Who was that? She asked groggily. Your father. He wants me to fix his basement. It's flooding. Oh, thank God you can go, she said, turning back over. He was so stressed about that party on Christmas Eve. Just go fix it, honey. It'll make things easier for everyone. I drove to the mansion through the dark, icy streets. When I arrived, Everett didn't even give me a cup of coffee. He pointed me toward the crawlspace, a narrow, muddy gap under the house where the pipes ran. I spent the next 8 hours in the mud and the dark. My back was cramping, and my fingers were so cold I could barely grip my pliers. But while I was down there, I had my tablet with me. I was supposed to be fixing the pipes, but I was also monitoring the internal servers at Vanguard. I saw a notification pop up. Beckett had just authorized a holiday bonus for himself and Lachlan, $50,000 each, signed off with a forged digital signature of the COO. They thought they were being clever. They thought the big boss wouldn't notice $100,000 disappearing during the holiday chaos. I sat in the mud, staring at the screen. I could hear the footsteps of the family above me. They were laughing, decorating the tree, and drinking hot cocoa. They had no idea that the man they were treating like a slave in the dirt below them was currently deciding whether or not to involve the FBI. I found the leak. It wasn't a broken pipe. It was a valve that had been tampered with. I realized then that Beckett had probably messed with it on purpose, knowing Everett would call me to fix it for free, just to humiliate me one more time before the holidays. When I finally crawled out, covered in grime and shivering, Genevieve met me at the basement door. She held out a single $10 bill. For your gas, she said, not looking at my face. And make sure you use the side entrance when you leave. I don't want you dripping mud on the foyer rug. I didn't take the money. I just walked past her, out into the biting wind. I had seen enough. I knew exactly what kind of people they were now. There was no more doubt. The heating system was fixed, but the warmth in my heart for this family was gone forever. Christmas Eve arrived like a funeral shroud. The gala was the event of the year for Everett's social circle. He had invited all the local business leaders, hoping to rub elbows with the people he thought were his peers. I had been ordered, really, to be there at 4 p.m. to act as security and maintenance. My job was to stand near the door, take coats, and make sure none of the catering equipment blew a fuse. Desmond, please, Clementine had pleaded that morning. Just wear the uniform. It's just for 4 hours. My father says it looks more professional if we have staff on hand. I am his son-in-law, Clementine. Not his staff. You're a handyman, Des. That's what you do. Why is this such a big deal now? She snapped. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was wearing a $3,000 silk dress that she'd bought on a credit card I secretly paid off every month. She looked beautiful, and she looked like a stranger. We arrived at the mansion. The house was glowing with thousands of white lights. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of pine and expensive perfume. Luna was with us, wearing a simple red dress. She looked like an angel, but she felt out of place. About 2 hours into the party, while I was taking a heavy fur coat from a local banker's wife, I heard a crash from the living room. It was followed by a sharp, piercing scream from Serafina. I ran toward the noise. In the center of the room, a large, hand-blown glass ornament lay shattered on the floor. It was a custom piece, one of those prestige items Everett loved to brag about. Luna was standing over it, her face white as a sheet, her hands trembling. You stupid, clumsy little brat. Serafina was screeching, her face contorted with rage. She was towering over my daughter, pointing a manicured finger. Do you have any idea what that cost? That's worth more than your father makes in a year. You're just like him, clumsy, cheap, and useless. Luna was sobbing. I'm sorry. I just wanted to see the light. Everett stepped forward. He didn't check to see if Luna was okay. He didn't even look at her face. He looked at the broken glass. That ornament was $5,000, he hissed. He turned to me, his eyes burning with a cold, hateful light. Look at what you've brought into my house. You can't even teach your kid to respect property. But then again, how could you? You've never owned anything nice in your life. The room went silent. All the wealthy guests were staring. I felt the gaze of 100 people on my maintenance uniform. She's a child, Everett, I said, my voice dangerously low. It was an accident. It was a mistake, Everett corrected me. A mistake I made 14 years ago when I let you into this family. You're a parasite, Desmond. You and your daughter are just dragging us down. Look at her, she's a mess. She's RAC Roy, just like her father. The word trash hung in the air like a poisonous gas. I looked at Clementine. I waited for her to say something. I waited for her to grab Luna and tell her father he'd gone too far. Clementine looked at the broken ornament, then at her father's furious face, then at the wealthy guests. She looked at me, and I saw the shame in her eyes, not shame for her father, but shame for me. Desmond, just take her home, Clementine whispered. You're ruining the night. Just go. Take her home? I asked. It's a blizzard outside, Clementine. The roads are disappearing. Then walk. Everett shouted. He grabbed my arm and shoved me toward the door. I want you out. Both of you. Now. Go freeze with your loser father, Luna. Maybe the cold will teach you to be more careful around things you can't afford. He pushed us out onto the porch and slammed the heavy oak door. The lock clicked with a finality that echoed in my soul. The wind hit us like a physical blow. It was 20 degrees below zero with the wind chill. My truck was parked at the very end of the long, winding driveway, buried under 6 inches of fresh snow. Luna was sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. She didn't have a heavy coat, we had left it in the foyer. She was shivering in her little red dress. I took off my heavy work jacket and wrapped it around her, lifting her into my arms. "It's okay, baby. Daddy's got you," I whispered, though my own teeth were chattering. The driveway was a quarter-mile long. By the time I reached the truck, my boots were soaked and my ears were numb. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers stiff and blue. I got her into the passenger seat and turned the key. Nothing. Just a pathetic click click click. The battery was dead from the extreme cold. I looked back at the mansion. The lights were sparkling. I could see the silhouettes of people dancing and drinking. My wife was in there. My family was in there. And they had left a 10-year-old girl to freeze in a blizzard over a piece of glass. I didn't try to go back. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me beg. I picked Luna up again, tucked her under my shirt for warmth, and started walking toward the main road. My heart wasn't beating with fear anymore. It was beating with a cold, calculated rage. "Daddy, I'm scared," Luna whimpered. "Don't be scared, Luna," I said, my voice sounding like grinding stones. "Everything is about to change. I promise you. Everything." I reached the main road and managed to flag down a passing snowplow. The driver was a kind man who took us to a high-end hotel about 5 miles away, a hotel that was part of the Vanguard investment portfolio. As I walked into the lobby, dripping wet and looking like a ghost, the concierge started to move toward me to tell me to leave. I reached into my soaked wallet and pulled out a black titanium card. "Presidential suite," I said. "Now. And call Adelaide. Tell her the game is over." The presidential suite of the Grand Penn Hotel was a world away from the frozen driveway of Everett's mansion. The room was heated to a perfect 72 degrees, and the air smelled of expensive sandalwood and fresh linen. I sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, watching Luna sleep. She was wrapped in 3 heated blankets, her breathing finally deep and steady. The hotel doctor had already checked her over, no frostbite, just shock and a mild chill. I, however, couldn't sleep. I was staring at my hands. They were still red from the cold, the skin cracked around the knuckles. For 14 years, these hands had fixed their sinks, carried their groceries, and took their insults. My phone vibrated on the marble coffee table. It was a text from Clementine. "Where are you? My father says you made a scene and stomped off. You are so immature, Desmond. You ruined the most important night of the year for my family. Don't bother coming home tonight. I need space." I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen until it went black. "Space," she said. I had given her my life. I had given her a child. I had given her a decade of loyalty while her brothers treated me like a stray dog. And her only concern was that I ruined a party where my daughter was called trash. At 3 a.m., there was a quiet knock on the door. It was Adelaide. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, her eyes alert despite the hour. She carried a leather-bound briefcase. "Sir," she said, her voice full of genuine concern. "I heard what happened. Are you and the little one okay?" "We're alive, Adelaide. That's the most I can say for tonight." She sat across from me and opened the briefcase. "I have the final reports you asked for. It's worse than we thought. Beckett didn't just steal the inventory. He's been using Vanguard's credit lines to fund a gambling habit in Atlantic City. He's over 200,000 in the hole. Lachlan has been ghosting, getting paid for 40 hours a week but only showing up for 4. And Everett. Everett has been taking consulting fees from vendors in exchange for inflated contracts." I leaned back, feeling the cold rage settle into a hard, crystalline structure. "So they're not just arrogant. They're criminals." "Technically, yes," Adelaide replied. "Since you are the sole owner of the parent company, their actions constitute grand larceny and fraud against your estate. We have enough to put all three of them in prison for a long time. No, I said, my voice cold. Prison is too quick. I want them to see exactly what they threw away. I want them to feel the ground disappear beneath their feet, just like they left Luna in the snow. What do you want to do? Execute Protocol 47, I said. I want every single one of them, the brothers, the cousins, the uncles, the sisters, all 47 members of that family who are on our payroll. I want them gone. Not tomorrow. Not next week. I want the letters delivered the day after Christmas. I want them to have one last day of thinking they're kings before the empire collapses. Adelaide nodded. And your wife, sir? I looked at the bedroom door where Luna was sleeping. Clementine made her choice in that living room. Now she has to live with it. The 2 days following Christmas were the quietest of my life. I stayed at the hotel with Luna. We ordered room service, watched movies, and I bought her every toy she'd ever wanted from the hotel's high-end boutique. For the first time, I didn't care about teaching her the value of $1. I just wanted to see her smile again. On the morning of December 27th, the doorbell to the suite rang. I checked the security camera. It was Clementine. She looked tired, her coat dusted with light snow. I opened the door. She didn't even look at the luxury of the suite. She was too wrapped up in her own indignation. So this is where you've been, she snapped, pushing past me. Living it up in a hotel while I've been fielding calls from my mother about how unstable you are. How can you even afford this room, Desmond? Did you steal money from our savings? The room is taken care of, Clementine. How is your father? He's furious. And he's right to be. You left a $5,000 ornament in pieces. He's demanding that you pay him back, or he's going to make sure you never get a contract in this town again. She stopped and pulled a thick envelope from her bag. Her voice softened, but it wasn't with love. It was with a cold, resigned finality. My father is right, Des. We're from different worlds. You're always going to be the guy in the mud, and I have a future to think about. My family is my support system. You're just a weight around my neck. She set the envelope on the table. I already knew what it was. Divorce papers? I asked quietly. It's for the best. If I stay with you, I lose my inheritance. I lose my position. My father said he'll take care of me and Luna, but only if you're out of the picture. I need you to sign these and move your things out of the house by the end of the week. I looked at the papers. And Luna? Did you ask her what she wants? Did you ask her how she felt when your father threw her out into a blizzard? Clementine looked away. She's a child. She'll forget. My father was just emotional. He didn't mean it. He meant every word, Clementine. And so did you when you stayed silent. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't even tell her she was making a mistake. I simply picked up a pen from the desk and signed my name on every line she indicated. I handed the papers back to her. There. You're free. You have your inheritance. You have your family. I hope they're worth it. Clementine looked surprised by how easy it was. Maybe she expected me to cry. Maybe she wanted me to beg. Thank you, Desmond. I'll send a truck for your tools. Don't worry about my tools, I said. I won't be needing them where I'm going. As she walked out the door, she didn't realize that she had just signed away the right to a fortune that would have made her father's mansion look like a garden shed. She walked away thinking she had finally pruned the dead wood. The moment the door closed behind Clementine, I picked up my phone. Adelaide. It's done. Send them. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out over the city. Below me, the lights of Vanguard Industrial's main manufacturing plant were glowing in the distance. It was a massive complex, a heartbeat of steel and fire that I had built from nothing. Within the hour, 47 couriers in 47 different cars were weaving through the snow-covered suburbs. They weren't delivering late Christmas presents. They were delivering legal termination notices, drafted by the most expensive law firm in the state. I sat down at my laptop and opened the master control panel for the company's payroll and security systems. Step 1, I muttered. I clicked a button, and 47 corporate credit cards were instantly deactivated. No more Miami trips. No more consulting fees. No more steak dinners on the company dime. Step 2. I revoked access to the company's internal servers for every member of the Everett clan. Their emails would stop working. Their keycards would be rejected at the gate. Their power was being erased in real time. Step 3. I sent a mass email to the entire company, over 2,000 employees. It was a simple message: due to an internal investigation into systemic fraud and ethical violations, the following 47 individuals have been terminated effective immediately. A new management team will be announced shortly. Your jobs are secure. The cancer has been removed. I watched the sent confirmation appear. I thought about the night in the snow. I thought about Luna shivering in my arms. I thought about the 14 years of loser and trash and handyman. People think revenge is a hot, burning thing. It's not. Real revenge is cold. It's a spreadsheet. It's a legal document. It's the sound of a luxury car being repossessed because the lease was in the company's name. I called the hotel's front desk. I need my car brought around. Not the truck. The Bentley. It was time to go to the office. It was time for the handyman to take his seat at the head of the table. I checked on Luna one last time. She was still sleeping, her face peaceful. I left a note for the hotel nanny and walked out, feeling lighter than I had in a decade. The game was over. The truth was coming, and it was going to hit them like a freight train. The morning of December 28th was absolute chaos in the Everett household. I know this because I had Adelaide monitor the security feeds from the company-owned perks they were using. Everett was sitting at his breakfast table, probably waiting for his maid to bring him coffee, when a courier knocked on the door. He was handed a thick, manila envelope. Inside was a letter stating that his consulting agreement with Vanguard Industrial had been terminated for cause, effective immediately. It also informed him that his company-sponsored health insurance, his car lease, and his expense account were all frozen. At the same time, Beckett was at a local dealership, trying to trade in his company SUV for a newer model. When the salesperson ran his corporate card, it came back with a fraud, seize card notification. He was nearly arrested on the spot. Lachlan and Serafina were still in bed when their letters arrived. By 10 a.m., my phone, the maintenance phone, was blowing up with hundreds of calls and texts. Desmond. Did you hear what happened? Beckett texted. Some lunatic at the office fired everyone. Call Everett. We need to find out who this owner is and get him to fix this. My card is dead. I didn't answer. I was already at Vanguard HQ. I had spent the morning in the executive suite, preparing the final documents. I was wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that cost more than my old truck. My hair was styled, and for the first time in 14 years, I wasn't wearing a single drop of grease. Sir, Adelaide said, stepping into the office. They're downstairs. All of them. They've formed a mob in the lobby. They're demanding to see the president. Are the cameras on in the boardroom? I asked. Yes, sir. And the security team is ready. Good. Let them in. But only the core family. Everett, Genevieve, Beckett, Lachlan, Serafina, and Clementine. I watched the monitors as they were ushered into the grand boardroom on the top floor. They looked frantic. Everett was purple with rage, waving his termination letter like a weapon. Clementine looked confused and frightened. She was still holding the folder with our signed divorce papers. They were shouting at the security guards, demanding to know where the coward was hiding. They had no idea that the coward was sitting just 10 feet away behind a set of double mahogany doors. I took a deep breath. I thought about the 47 letters. I thought about the 47 people who had lived like kings on my hard work while treating me like dirt. "Adelaide," I said over the intercom. "Open the doors." The heavy doors swung open with a silent, mechanical grace. The shouting in the room stopped instantly. Everett was mid-sentence, pointing his finger at a security guard. He turned his head, expecting to see a CEO he could bully. Instead, he saw me. I walked to the head of the table and sat down in the high-backed leather chair. I didn't say anything. I just leaned back and laced my fingers together, looking at each of them in turn. The silence lasted for a full minute. I watched the gears turning in their heads. I watched the confusion turn into disbelief, and then, finally, into a horrifying realization. "Desmond?" Clementine whispered, her voice trembling. "What are you doing in that chair? Get down from there before you get in trouble. We're here to see the owner." "You are seeing him, Clementine," I said. My voice was calm, resonant, and completely devoid of the handyman accent I had used for years. "I am the owner of Vanguard Industrial. I am the man who built this company. And I am the man who just fired all of you." Beckett let out a hysterical laugh. "You? No. No way. You're a loser. You fix pipes. You're a handyman." "I'm a mechanical engineer with a vision, Beckett," I replied. "I built the first prototype in a garage while you were still trying to figure out how to spend your father's allowance. I hired you because Clementine asked me to help her family. But you didn't work. You stole. You took $242,000 in unauthorized bonuses and inventory sales. I have the receipts." Beckett's face went from red to a sickly, pale white. He slumped into a chair, his mouth hanging open. Everett stepped forward, slamming his fists on the table. "This is a trick. You can't do this. I'm the head of this family. I've given years to this company." "You've given nothing, Everett," I snapped, my voice finally showing a hint of the steel beneath. "You took consulting fees from the cleaning crew and the landscaping company. You treated the warehouse staff like servants. And most importantly, you threw a 10-year-old girl into a blizzard on Christmas Eve because she broke a $5,000 piece of glass." I pulled a small box from my pocket and tossed it onto the table. It slid across the polished wood and stopped in front of him. "Open it," I commanded. Everett opened the box with shaking hands. Inside was a shattered piece of glass, the ornament Luna had broken. "That glass is worth more than your father makes in a year," I said, mimicking Serafina's voice. "Well, Everett, that glass is now the only thing you own. Because as of 9 a.m. this morning, I have filed for the repossession of your house, which is titled to Vanguard Industrial. I have cancelled the leases on your cars. And I have initiated a civil lawsuit to recover the funds you embezzled." Genevieve let out a sob. "Desmond, please, we're family." "Family doesn't leave family to freeze in a storm," I said coldly. "Family doesn't call a child RAC Roy. You aren't family. You're just bad investments that I'm finally liquidating." Clementine stepped forward, the divorce papers still in her hand. Her eyes were wide with a mix of horror and sudden, desperate greed. "Des, honey, why didn't you tell me?" she stammered, trying to reach for my hand. "I didn't know. If I had known, I would have never. I mean, we can fix this. We're married. These papers, they haven't been filed yet. I can tear them up." I looked at the papers, then at her. "You signed them, Clementine. You told me I was a weight around your neck. You chose a phantom inheritance over your husband and your daughter. You didn't want Desmond the man. You only want Desmond the president. And you can't have him." "But Luna needs her mother," she cried. "Luna needs a mother who protects her," I said. "Not one who watches her get kicked out into the snow and says nothing. You'll have your legal representation, and you'll get exactly what the prenuptial agreement, the one you signed 15 years ago without reading, stipulates. Which is to say, almost nothing. At that moment, the door opened again. A man walked in. It was Uncle Silas, the only one who hadn't been fired. He looked at the chaos in the room and then at me. "Desmond," he said softly. "I always knew you were too smart for those tool belts." "Silas," I said, standing up. "You're the only one who ever treated me, or Luna, with an ounce of respect. You're being promoted to head of logistics. You'll have a seat on the board. And you'll have a budget to fix all the messes these people made." Silas nodded, a small smile on his face. "Thank you, son." I turned back to the rest of the family. "Security will escort you out. If any of you set foot on Vanguard property again, you will be arrested for trespassing. If you try to contact Luna, my lawyers will hit you with a restraining order so fast your heads will spin." Everett tried to scream something, but the security team, men who actually respected me, grabbed him by the arms and dragged him toward the door. Beckett and Lachlan followed like beaten dogs. Clementine was the last one at the door. She looked back at me, tears streaming down her face. "I loved you, Des." "No," I said, sitting back down. "You loved the idea of who you thought I was. And then you hated it. You never actually saw me at all." The doors closed. The room was silent again. I sat there for a long time, looking at the city skyline. I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and peace. I had lost a wife, a home, and a family. But I had gained the truth. I picked up the phone and called the hotel. "Is Luna awake?" "Yes, Mr. President. She's eating breakfast. Tell her Daddy's coming home. And tell her we're going on a trip. Anywhere she wants to go." 6 months later. I am sitting on a balcony overlooking the ocean in a small town in Southern California. Luna is down on the beach, digging in the sand with a new set of high-quality tools I bought her. She's laughing, her skin tan and healthy. Vanguard is thriving under Adelaide and Silas. We've cleaned out the corruption and returned to the values I started the company with. As for the Everett clan? I heard Everett had to sell his luxury watches just to pay for a 2-bedroom apartment. Beckett is working at a car wash, and Clementine is back to waitressing at a diner, though not the one where we met. I don't feel joy in their suffering, but I don't feel pity either. They are finally living the lives they earned. I learned something important through all of this. Wealth isn't about the black card in your wallet or the name on the building. Wealth is the ability to look your daughter in the eye and know you protected her. Wealth is the freedom to be exactly who you are, without an ounce of grease or a mountain of lies. I'm no longer the invisible architect. I'm just a father. And that's the best job I've ever had. Was I too cruel for firing 47 family members at once, or did they deserve to lose everything the moment they chose money over the safety of my 10-year-old daughter? Thank you for watching this journey of justice. If you believe family should be about love, not bank accounts, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Share your thoughts on the handyman's revenge in the comments below. The Grand Penn Hotel wasn't just a place to stay. For me, it was a tactical headquarters. While Luna slept, I sat at the mahogany desk in the suite's office, the glow of the encrypted laptop reflecting in my tired eyes. I spent the next 4 hours going through the digital shadows of the Everett family. It's funny how people become careless when they think no one is watching to help. I found emails from Lachlan to a friend bragging about how he'd been charging his personal gym memberships and weekend benders to the company's professional development fund. I found photos of Serafina at high-end boutiques, smiling with bags of designer clothes, paid for with a Vanguard corporate card that was supposed to be for office supplies. They weren't just mean, they were remarkably stupid. I remember thinking about a time, 6 years ago, when our old roof had a leak. I had asked Everett for a small loan, just $2,000, to fix it before the winter. He had laughed in my face. He told me that men who can't provide for their roofs don't deserve to have houses. He said it while wearing a tuxedo I had indirectly paid for. I ended up fixing that roof myself, in the pouring rain, while Clementine stayed inside and complained about the noise. As I sat in the luxury of the hotel, I realized that I hadn't been keeping a secret for 14 years. I had been conducting a long-term character study. And every single member of that family, with the exception of Silas, had failed the test. They didn't see people, they saw tools. And when a tool didn't work for them, or didn't look shiny enough, they threw it away. I messaged Adelaide, I want a full audit of the Everett Luxury Fund over the last decade. Every cent. Every dinner. Every unauthorized Uber ride. I'm not just firing them. I'm going to make them pay back every dollar of the company's blood. She replied within seconds, already on it, sir. We've discovered Everett diverted nearly $500,000 into a secret offshore account in the Caymans. It's a clear violation of the executive contract he signed. Good, I typed. Make sure the legal team has the frozen assets paperwork ready. I want the locks on their company-leased houses changed by noon on the 28th. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. The blizzard was still raging outside. The world was white and silent. I felt like a god looking down on a kingdom I was about to burn to the ground. It wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that they had let my daughter walk into this white void without a second thought. That was the one debt they could never repay. The hours leading up to Clementine's arrival with the divorce papers were some of the longest of my life. I found myself looking through old photos on my phone. There was one of us at a park when Luna was 3. Clementine looked so happy, so grounded. What happened to that woman? I realized that the poison of her father's approval was more addictive than any drug. Everett didn't love his children, he traded with them. He gave them status in exchange for their souls. And Clementine had traded her husband for the hope of staying in her father's inner circle. When she finally showed up at the hotel suite, the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. It wasn't the blizzard outside, it was the sheer emptiness in her expression. She looked at the gold-leafed mirrors and the silk curtains of the suite, and I could see the suspicion in her eyes. She thought I was a thief. She couldn't even fathom the idea that I was the owner. Desmond, she had said, her voice tight. You've always been selfish. Taking Luna to a place like this when we have bills to pay? My father says you're probably having a mental breakdown. Your father says a lot of things, Clementine. Most of them are lies. Don't you dare talk about him like that, she snapped. He's a pillar of this community. He's the reason we have anything at all. He's the one who gave you those maintenance contracts. I almost laughed. The irony was so thick I could taste it. He didn't give me anything, Clem. I gave him a life he didn't earn. But you've made your choice. You've chosen his mansion over our home. What home? She spat. That rental dump with the creaky floors? I'm tired of being the poor sister. I'm tired of Serafina looking at me with pity. I'm an Everett. I belong in the world of the elite, not in the world of oil stains and toolboxes. Then go back to your world, I said, pointing to the divorce papers. But remember this moment. Remember that you're the one who walked away. After she left, I didn't feel the crushing weight of a broken heart. I felt the lightness of a man who had finally dropped a heavy, useless burden. I went into the bedroom and sat by Luna. She stirred in her sleep and grabbed my hand. Daddy, she whispered. I'm here, Luna. Are we going back to Grandpa's house? Never again, baby. We're going to a house where the chairs are for sitting and the people are for loving. I promise. I spent the rest of the night working with Adelaide. We didn't just prepare the 47 letters. We prepared 47 folders of evidence. We were going to dismantle their lives with the same precision I used to dismantle a faulty engine. By dawn, the trap was set. The couriers were staged. The handyman was retiring, and the president was taking his place. The lobby of Vanguard Industrial was a masterpiece of glass and steel. Usually, it was a place of quiet professionalism. But on the morning of the 28th, it looked like a scene from a disaster movie. 47 people, a whole clan of cousins, in-laws, and hangers-on, were crowded around the reception desk. They were all holding the same white envelope. The noise was deafening. "My keycard isn't working," shouted a cousin named Marcus, who I had hired as a safety inspector but who actually spent his days playing mobile games in the breakroom. "Who the hell is the office of the chairman?" yelled another. "I want to talk to Everett. He'll fire the idiot who sent these." They were so loud they didn't notice the black Bentley Mulsanne pull up to the private executive entrance. They didn't see me step out, flanked by 4 security professionals in dark suits. I bypassed the main lobby and took the private elevator straight to the top floor. Adelaide was waiting for me. She handed me a tablet. "Sir, the police have already been notified about Beckett's disappearing inventory. They are waiting for your signal to file the formal charges. The company-owned vehicles are being tracked by GPS. We have tow trucks on standby to recover them the moment the termination becomes final at noon." "Wait until I've spoken to them," I said. "I want to see the look on their faces first." I sat in my office and watched the lobby feed. I saw Clementine arrive. She looked pale. She was trying to push through the crowd to get to the elevators, but the security guards, men who used to nod to me in the hallways when I was fixing the lights, held the line. "I'm Everett's daughter," she screamed. "Let me up." "I'm sorry, ma'am," the guard said, his face like stone. "No one from the Everett family is allowed above the ground floor without an escort." It was a beautiful sight. The power they thought they had was nothing but a mirage. It was a costume they had been wearing, and I had just pulled the curtain back. I looked at the clock. 11:55 a.m. "Bring them up," I said into the intercom. "Just the inner circle. Let's finish this." When the elevator doors opened into the executive boardroom, the family burst out like water from a broken dam. They were all talking at once, a chaotic symphony of entitlement and confusion. Everett was leading the pack. He looked like he was about to have a stroke. "Where is he? Where is this president? I'm going to sue this company into the ground. I'm going to." He stopped dead when he saw me. I wasn't standing. I was sitting at the head of the 30-foot mahogany table. I had a glass of sparkling water in front of me and a stack of legal documents. I looked at him with the same clinical detachment I'd used to inspect a rusted bolt. "Sit down, Everett," I said. The quietness of my voice was more effective than any shout. It commanded the room. He didn't sit. He sputtered. "Desmond? What are you doing? This is a joke, right? You're here to fix the air conditioning?" Lachlan laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Yeah, nice suit, Des. Did you steal that from the wardrobe department? Get out of the chairman's chair before security drags you out." I looked at Adelaide, who was standing by the window. She stepped forward and spoke with the voice of a woman who managed a multi-billion-dollar empire. "You are speaking to Mr. Desmond Sterling," she said, using my full legal name. "The founder, sole owner, and chairman of Vanguard Industrial. And you are currently trespassing in his private office." The silence that followed was so heavy it felt like it had physical weight. I watched the blood leave Genevieve's face. I watched Beckett's eyes dart toward the door, looking for an exit that didn't exist. 14 years, I said, leaning forward. For 14 years, I let you believe I was nothing. I wanted to see if you had any humanity. I wanted to see if you could treat a handyman with the same dignity you treat a millionaire. You failed. Every single one of you. I looked at Serafina. You called my daughter trash. You insulted her clothes, her toys, and her soul. Today, your bank account is at zero. Your house is being locked. Your car is being towed. Who's the trash now, Serafina? She tried to speak, but only a small, choked sob came out. And you, Beckett, I turned my gaze to him. The police are downstairs. They have the files on the copper theft and the gambling fraud. You have 5 minutes to decide if you want to walk out in handcuffs or if you want to sign a full confession and a repayment agreement. Beckett fell to his knees. Literally. He started blubbering about his kids, about the holidays. You didn't care about my kid in the snow, I said, my voice like ice. Don't you dare talk to me about yours. The most painful part wasn't Everett's rage or Beckett's begging. It was the look on Clementine's face. It was a look of pure, unadulterated regret, but not for the man she'd lost. It was for the life she'd thrown away. Desmond, we can talk about this, she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't know. You lied to me for 14 years. How can you blame me for being upset? You tricked us. I didn't trick you, Clementine. I just didn't tell you how much money I had. My character didn't change. My heart didn't change. I was the same man who brought you coffee at the diner. I was the same man who held you when Luna was born. The only thing that changed was your perception of my value. I signed those papers because I was scared, she lied. No, I said, standing up. You signed those papers because you thought I was a loser and your father was a king. You bet on the wrong horse. And now, the race is over. I signaled to the security team. Get them out of here. I have a company to run, and I don't want the smell of grease, the real kind, the kind that comes from corruption, in my office anymore. As they were being led away, Everett turned back one last time. He looked small. Shrunken. Without the title and the company car, he was just an old, mean man in an expensive suit that didn't fit right anymore. You'll regret this, Desmond, he wheezed. No one will work for a man who treats his family like this. Actually, Everett, I said, the morale in the factory has never been higher. The employees are throwing a party because the Everett dictatorship is finally over. You weren't a leader. You were a parasite. And the host has finally woken up. After the room was cleared, I sat back down. The silence was glorious. Adelaide brought me a cup of coffee, real coffee, not the sludge from the breakroom. What now, sir? Now, I said, looking at the photo of Luna on my desk, we take the company back to its roots. We hire people based on talent, not bloodlines. And we make sure that no one in this building ever feels like they're just a handyman. I spent the next few hours signing the new executive appointments. Silas was already downstairs, calming the nerves of the mid-level managers. He was a natural. He'd spent decades being ignored by Everett, which meant he knew exactly how the company actually functioned. As the sun began to set over the city, I realized that the 47 letters weren't just about revenge. They were about justice. They were about clearing the path for something better. I had spent 14 years in the shadows, but today, I was finally standing in the light. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. Make sure the divorce settlement is fair but firm. I want Luna to have everything, but I want Clementine to understand the cost of her choices. And, tell the hotel to get the private jet ready. Luna and I are going to the beach. The air in Southern California is different from Pennsylvania. It's light, salty, and carries the promise of a perpetual beginning. I'm sitting on the deck of our new home, a place built of glass and wood that blends into the cliffs. There are no silk chairs here that you can't sit on. Every piece of furniture is meant to be lived in. Luna is running along the shoreline with a golden retriever we adopted last month. She's shouting at the waves, her laughter echoing against the rocks. She's a different child now. The shadow of her grandfather's house has faded, replaced by the confidence of a girl who knows she is loved for exactly who she is. I still have my old toolbox. It sits in a place of honor in my home workshop. Sometimes, when a faucet leaks or a door squeaks, I get out my wrenches and I fix it myself. I like the feeling of the metal in my hands. It keeps me grounded. It reminds me that before I was a CEO, I was a builder. I've started a foundation in Luna's name. We provide scholarships for trade schools and engineering programs for kids from struggling families. I want to find the next invisible architects, the kids who have the drive but not the means. Clementine calls sometimes. She's working at a boutique in the mall now. She sounds tired. She tries to talk about us, but I always steer the conversation back to Luna's school schedule and her health. The romantic bridge between us hasn't just been burned, the river beneath it has changed course. Everett passed away a few months ago. The stress of the lawsuits and the loss of status was too much for his heart. I didn't go to the funeral, but I paid for the headstone. It's a simple one. I figured he spent enough of his life trying to be bigger than he was. In death, he deserved some humility. Beckett is still in the middle of his legal battles. He'll likely spend a few years in a minimum security facility. It's a harsh lesson, but one he earned one stolen copper pipe at a time. People ask me if I regret the 14 years of silence. Sometimes, I do. I regret the moments of pain I could have spared Luna. But then I look at her, and I see a girl who isn't spoiled, who isn't entitled, and who knows that her father would walk through a blizzard for her. That kind of bond can't be bought with $100 million trust fund. It has to be forged in the cold. I am Desmond Sterling. I am a father, an engineer, and yes, a damn good handyman. My life is no longer a secret, and my heart is no longer under repair. The sun is dipping below the horizon now, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Luna is coming back up the stairs, sandy and happy. Daddy! Look what I found, she yells, holding up a perfectly smooth piece of sea glass. It's not broken anymore. The ocean fixed it. I smile and pull her into a hug. You're right, baby. Sometimes the things that break turn into the most beautiful things of all. Was I too cruel for firing 47 family members at once, or did they deserve to lose everything the moment they chose money over the safety of my 10-year-old daughter? Thank you for watching this journey of justice. If you believe family should be about love, not bank accounts, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Share your thoughts on The Handyman's Revenge in the comments below.